From certmedia.com, and today I'm going to be going over the Genesis 3.1 release. I'm going to go through the new onboarding process on a new staging site, and I'm just going to go over some of the features that were added as well as some of the caveats that you should be aware of. So Genesis 3.1 is definitely a godsend in the sense that it adds things that Genesis should have had in its framework since the beginning, or at least recently. And Genesis is my favorite framework, but it's been lagging behind. And this helps consolidate features that were usually spread out through different plugins. It helps modernize the backend a little bit, and it definitely helps with the onboarding process. Kind of. We're going to go into that. So I'm going to go ahead and read through these release notes, and we're just going to go ahead and look at it through the staging site. So 3.1, you can edit the footer credits via the customizer. This is about time. Previously, you had to use Genesis simple edits or add a filter, and it was just a really nasty solution. The new Genesis sidebar for the block editor. When you're in the block editor now, you'll have a dedicated Genesis tab at the top right, kind of where Yoast SEO is. I'll go ahead and show you that when we move over there. But more importantly, they added a bunch of new options. Hide titles, so you can enable the title toggle functionality, which used to be a separate plugin. You can enable it for, by default, it only comes with pages, but using a add theme support tag, you can add it for any post type that you want. Breadcrumbs can now be enabled or disabled on a per post or page basis. You can also expand this to additional custom post types. Featured images. Now, this is important. Your theme right now will not have support for this out of the box. And I'll scroll down to the bottom of this post where they show you the code, or I'll just put a link to my own blog post that covers this release on how to enable the support for featured images. But this is a lot better solution because previously there was no way to do it outside of adding the code for yourself in the child theme or just trying to filter your way through it. This is just a lot more streamlined, and it can be enabled or disabled through the customizer as well, which is pretty handy. And then you can also enable it or disable it on posts or pages. And just like the other options, you can expand its support to additional custom post types. It says that there's easier access to the page layout and custom class options. All of this means, as opposed to it being in a meta box at the bottom of the post in the block editor, it's now in its own dedicated sidebar. That's all it means. Genesis starter packs. I was really interested in this feature when I saw it, but I'm going to show you why I'm not like overly obsessed with it now that I've clicked and saw the onboarding process and how it's a little disappointing. Automatically disable schema markup output if the Yoast SEO plugin is active. So this will not deactivate all schema markup. Things that mark up, like your header or your footer, things that Yoast SEO doesn't add, those should still work. But the schema output for blog posts / articles, I think it was the article markup that they were using, will no longer be output. This just makes it easier because it makes your schema more streamlined and there's not duplicates saying two different things for the exact same content. And this is a great addition. As I already mentioned, you can enable featured image output. We will be using Revolution Pro, so I don't have to go ahead and add the code. But again, I'll just scroll down to where it has. And you can output custom logos. Again, almost every Genesis theme by now has had support for this. This just makes use of the native WordPress site logo option that's been in there since forever that nobody really uses support for. This adds support for it, great thing. Genesis endpoints for the WordPress REST API. Cool. It's not going to be used much. They've removed the useless no ODTP and no Yahoo directory from SEO settings because neither one of those services exist anymore. And they've just done some other refinement, yada, yada, yada. The rest of it's not so much important. And I'll just scroll down to what I was talking about. You will need to add code right here for adding featured image support. I'll go ahead and show you how to do that via the blog post, but let's go ahead and jump into the new onboarding process. So I was actually really interested in this onboarding process because I'm like, wow, they give you nice custom themes based on Revolution right out of the box, making the onboarding process super easy. Yeah, it's not quite that. As you can see, it gives you recommended plugins. It helps with the creation of certain things, but this is clearly just a first passover, and we're going to see why. So I'm going to click view the demo of the photographer and small business. Two things that should almost entirely be different. The layout for a photographer and a small business are going to be very different. Now, as you could see, I heart cameras, view my work, latest work, we rise above. It's quite literally just the same pages with a couple of different images. They didn't even replace the latest work images. I'm really hoping this is just a first pass, and maybe they'll come back and redefine these style packs that they're calling it, because in all honesty, the rest of the pages are basically exactly the same. They're all linked to the exact same pages. The Revolution Paris page that I just clicked on, I think that was its blog post. And if I come over to the photographer one, it's going to take me to the exact same page. They're not different themes or even style packs. It's just like two different images on the, it's like one different image on the homepage and not much else. So hopefully they'll go ahead and expand this, but we should go ahead and test the onboarding process. So I'm going to use the small business one. There's recommended plugins that it includes. Genesis e-News Extend if you have a newsletter. I don't recommend installing WordPress Forms Lite, Simple Social Icons, and Atomic Block. So we're going to go ahead and install this and see if it works. This isn't a standard shared host from SiteGround, so this would be a common or ideal setup for a lot of people. So I click this button and it grayed out, and now I don't know if it's working or not. I'm gonna assume that it's working. Did it? Well, it says it got a 403 error, so let's just refresh. Maybe I did something wrong. We'll go ahead and just make sure that no posts were added. We're going to close out of these extra ones. So no, nothing was added. We're going to try this one more time. Maybe a server error. Okay, if I can click it from here, now it takes me to this new menu. That's quite odd. I'm just going to chalk it up to server error. Recommended plugins are being installed, and it's adding the demo content. And you could view your home page, and I expect it to look, yeah, exactly the same. So that was quick. I do like this user interface here. It's quick. It shows you that things are being installed. A lot of times with demo imports, they'll basically just have one progress bar and it may freeze for the longest time as it's importing like a bunch of posts. This is pretty streamlined. So let's just go. It did install the plugins. WordPress Forms Lite. Did it install any WordPress forms? Simple contact form looks to have been added with today's date, so that would make me assume that it came on there. So we're going to go to the contact page, and first, last email. So it does look like it left it at the default WordPress permalinks. Slightly annoying. Maybe they could add that to just use like a recommended post name in the onboarding process. That way you don't have to do it yourself, but that's not their fault. So simple contact us page. I wouldn't use WordPress Forms Lite personally, but it's a simple contact form. It can be changed out. Everything else looks to function and look basically identical to the previous pages, which is good. This is a very clean layout. I still don't understand why everything's basically the same, but let's go to a blog post. So it didn't import any fake blog posts. It's stuck with Hello World, which that's fine. So overall, onboarding process worked. It didn't blow my mind by any stretch of the imagination, but it works. Maybe WordPress forms could be, I don't know why they're using that as the recommended plugin. I personally don't like it, but it's a very popular plugin. It's a good plugin by all means, so looks great. So let's go ahead and explore the new options in the customizer. So we're going to go to Appearance, Customize. The theme SEO settings will continue to be enabled if your site is not using an SEO plugin. Your theme settings. So under singular content, you can show featured images on posts or pages. I'm going to enable it for post because that's where you would typically expect to see a featured image. And then we're going to go to that hello world post and just see if it has a featured image. It doesn't. So what I'm going to do is I will add one here in a little bit and then we'll come back and visit it. The site layout tab works exactly the same. They mentioned that it was easier or something like that, but it wasn't major. Now, something that's important with the new breadcrumbs option, to use the breadcrumbs options, you first need to enable it here in the theme settings. That way it can then be disabled selectively. So I'm going to do it on post page, single page. I'm basically going to do it on all the pages that aren't the home page because your home page doesn't need it. Cool. And then we're going to come back and revisit that. Trackbacks are disabled by default, which is good. Content archives, you can enable a featured image. I'm not going to do that because we only have the one post, but you can do that. And then you can just do the rest of your remaining settings as they've always functioned. Under site identity, you can now add this logo. And I believe Revolution Pro has support for it out of the box. I'm just going to select I don't have a random image. Let me just flop over here and see if I have some sort of random image that I can use. Here we go. I have this office image. Don't know what it was for. So now we're just going to see if this works. So we're going to skip the cropping, and there we go. Adds the logo, and you can set the logo width. I'm going to set it to 100 and see if it shrinks it. Works perfect. And congrats to Genesis. And if you don't have a logo, it automatically falls back to the site title, which you could change here, and the tagline. Works perfect. We're going to go back and publish it because I don't want to stick an ugly image there. Color scheme, everything works exactly the same in the customizer. Now, this new post, we're gonna reload this and we're gonna talk about some things. So Genesis is making a large push for supporting Gutenberg, which is the block editor, which is amazing. At first I didn't like Gutenberg, and I will be the first to admit that, but now that it's kind of growing up, it's a lot more tolerable for basic page layout and blog posts. Doing more complex pages, I will admit, is a major pain, but it's pretty simple. The SEO settings are down here, which is in line with how Yoast SEO does it, and the scripts section is still where it's always been. I like that these options are down here and not in the sidebar, primarily because it's easier to manage and they're more complex, and you'd be doing these at the end of your blog post. The new Genesis sidebar they mentioned is up here at the top right. Typically, the only other plugin that really adds one is Yoast SEO. So Yoast SEO would just appear right here to the right of it. When you click this, you're going to open up a sidebar with dedicated options for Genesis. So we have breadcrumbs enabled for posts. And you can see that by visiting this post. And right here, you are here, home, uncategorized, hello world. You could disable it here for only this post. This is really flexible, particularly for the pages, because pages, certain designs that you're going for, breadcrumbs may not look all that good. You can also hide featured images. So if you have a post and it just doesn't need a featured image in the header, which is quite common, but you want a featured image so that way it can show in archives or default for the Yoast SEO Open Graph, this is a handy feature. But you must first, obviously, set a featured image. So you're going to have to go back to these settings, set the featured image. We're going to use that office photo that I found. We're going to click Update, reload this. And there you go, automatically enabled, showing a featured image. And the dimensions of the featured image are 640 by 365. That's a reasonable size for this area. This can be controlled by the theme, I believe. You can declare what you want. Very odd code just stuck right there in there. But simple featured image. And if you want to keep the featured image, but you don't want it to show, you could simply do that by coming over here and selecting hide the featured image. You can also select the layout. So this is something that's nice to have. So Genesis has multiple layout configurations, and previously with Genesis, if you wanted a post to have, so previously you could set the site layout for the entire website. You could set it as full width or content sidebar or primary sidebar content. You could set that globally, or you could use a filter to override it for a post type. But doing it for like one odd page wasn't easy. So say you had one landing page and you wanted to be full width so that way only the header was showing with no sidebar, and it was a page post type. But the rest of your pages were declared to use the primary sidebar content, just as an example. You would have to either use a filter to override it, which was annoying, change the logic to be the inverse and make sure that all the other ones have it, or change the page template to one that didn't have a sidebar, which existed. This is just a lot more streamlined because it allows you to change the site layout for each post or page. And the fact that it's in the Gutenberg sidebar area makes it really easy to access. So this post right now is the site default, which is full width. So we're going to click content primary sidebar. And remember, we also enable to hide that featured image. And as you can see, it's added it here, and it just changed it for this post only. You come back to the About Us page, for instance, it's completely back to normal, completely full width. This allows you to have a lot greater flexibility. Part of the issue with Genesis is it's kind of stuck in its ways because it's meant to be a really simple and effective framework. But because of that, the native flexibility of it is almost non-existent. So this allows you to just select the sidebar content for any of your posts or pages, which is just a better way of doing it. Genesis is coming a long way. It isn't there yet per se, but it's coming. The layout selector is also fairly interesting. This comes with the atomic blocks, I believe. Atomic blocks is the Genesis plugin. It's the Genesis Gutenberg add-on, if you would. It comes with a bunch of additional blocks. You can put your MailChimp key here. That's kind of an odd place for it to be stuck because Atomic Blocks doesn't have a lot of options natively. You can do your getting started, which includes a bunch of information about the blocks. And honestly, I'm glad to see the adoption of Gutenberg within Genesis. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go through a simple page, and I'm going to set it up. So right now I have a simple page. I'm just going to call it Who We Are. So basically a knockoff of the About Us page, but it's a good way of illustrating what can be done now without much headache. So featured images are not enabled, so we can close this. The title, we don't want the title to show on this page. We're instead going to use a hero image in Gutenberg. So we're going to enable that. And because of that, we don't really want breadcrumbs. And we're going to use a full width template. So we're going to go ahead here and we're just going to search for an image. It's a specific type of image. There it is. It's a cover photo. I'm going to go to the media library, select this, and it adds a nice gradient because it's Gutenberg, and we're going to type in Who We Are. And we're going to change this to a heading. We're going to make it heading 2. Perfect. I'm going to bold it too. And then I'm going to make this a 100% full width, and we're going to preview it. Awesome. Right there. Simple page. the layout. But maybe we can, we are. And then using simple CSS, I could align this text to the center if I wanted or anywhere else. But right now, I think that looks great. We're using full width content, which isn't real full width because I would want this to stretch the entire length, but it looks fine for the sake of demonstration. Then we're gonna use this little column block, and I'm just gonna copy and paste the About Us page content that was right over here, in all honesty. I'm just gonna copy this because I don't want to have to write up some text, who we are, and then copy the rest of this over here. And because, there we go, done in Gutenberg, I can just copy that text. And then we're going to make this full width. Let's do, there we go. I'm very curious as to what they did to get this over there. Oh, this is a custom layout block, that's why. I want to make sure that that's all text. So you just add whatever you're really feeling over here. We just make this a heading. Come over here. Simple, flexible combination. If I ever want to enable that title again, I could just do it here. Now we have the who we are up here, which may look better depending on the design you're going for. It's just very flexible, which is something that Genesis up until now hasn't had. So Genesis 3.1, amazing update. I recommend you go ahead and update now. It's been out in the wild now. I haven't run into any issues yet. In the Genesis WordPress group, some people have reported a weird issue where the menu displays twice. I don't know how it's doing that. I imagine it has to do with the weird implementation of maybe the logo or the navigation, or they've just done something really wrong. But all in all, Genesis 3.1, great update. Hope to see more of it. I really hope those style packs get improved because I wouldn't even bother calling them packs at this point. They've only changed the homepage image, which that's a big letdown because the images they all grabbed off of like Pexels or something free. That's where I got this image right here from. I just downloaded it for something. So there you go. Genesis starter packs needs an improvement. The features, wonderful. The improvement for support for Gutenberg, wonderful. Everything else, go ahead and try it. If you have any questions about the latest update, you can ask me, join the Genesis WordPress group, or go to my website and read the blog post that goes in these features a little bit more in depth. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.